Outside the Empire, thousands of Londoners crowding the approaches to see the royal family and also the many film stars and notabilities attending the first Royal Command film performance.
Hello, G. George. Hello, G. George. Are you all right? Are you going to try to land? Do you want to fix?
The name's not G. George, it's P. Peter. Peter D. Carter.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be a colour merchant because as an assistant cameraman or operator, focus puller, number boy, you name it, I worked in black and white, of course, before colour came in. But by the time I was old enough, or whatever, to become a cameraman, Technicolor had arrived. So my first photographic job was, in fact, in colour, and it was called A Matter of Life and Death. At that time, I had not yet photographed a feature film in its entirety. I'd done lots of little pieces, and I'd worked mostly on the second unit. And I was desperate to get the big break, and it was Michael Powell who gave it to me. I was working on the second unit on one of his films, the Colonel Blimp, and I'd had a particularly difficult shot to do with animals' heads with horns. It was rather difficult, but I had time to do a good job on it. And I heard a voice say, "Very interesting," and looked round, and there was the great Michael Powell, and he said, "Would you like to photograph my next film?" And I said, "Oh, yes, Mr. Powell." And he went, and I thought, well, he's just said that, and he'll forget all about it, but he didn't. There was, right at the beginning, a kind of empathy that he seemed to like what I'd done, and I found that I had an enormous respect for what he was doing. I realized at once that this was a big opportunity to make something very special, because he was a very brave, innovative director whose daring fascinated me.
Don't forget your book.
I remember in the first preparation days of the film, I said to him quite casually, I said, "Michael, I suppose heaven will be in color and the earth will be in black and white." He said, "No, the contrary." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because everyone expects that." So he was going to do the opposite.
A little trick of mine, you remember?
That was typical in his nature. He was perverse to the extent that he would like to do anything that was different. I mean, the ordinary was anathema to him. Emmerich would be the one who occasionally would say to Michael, "Well, I think this is going too far because of this or that," and he'd usually be right. And it was a good combination of two similar views in different ways, if you know what I mean.
You are mad!
My lord, I ask the court to restrain him.
Granted.
Michael collected around him the best technicians that were available, and he had a brilliant art director, Alfred Junger, a German who used to make the most wonderful sketches, and he was, I would say, Teutonic in his method of talking to me, and I was a little bit overawed by him at times, because he was giving me definite instructions where the light was going to be. I had several battles with him, but in the end we worked together very well.
You are determined to get me into this salad. And what about the salad you got me into? Now look here.
In it, as you know, there was a black and white sequence. I didn't tell anybody. I hadn't photographed in black and white before, but I got away with it.
By the way, monsieur, when you see Peter, would you give him a message for me?
Avec plaisir.
Just say, "What ho?"
Bon. When he's starved for Technicolor up there.
In order to get the transition from black and white to color, We would shoot the main sequence in black and white with a black and white camera, which incidentally was much easier for me as a cameraman because you needed much less light than Technicolor wanted for color. But the penultimate shot on the sequence was using the Technicolor camera so that they would be able to start with their system in black and white and then bring in the color. The camera itself was like a Rolls-Royce of cameras. It was perfect. But it ran 3 films at the same time. And the magazines were big magazines. The film, everything was big about it. With the blimp, to keep the noise down, was enormous. It was probably over 4 foot high. In a small room, it was virtually impossible to move the camera around in a tiny room. But on big sets, it was quite easy to do. The cameraman used to receive, after each day, the 3 negatives, the 3 primary negatives, and 1 color picture to give him a guide how he was doing. I have several, and they're great fun to look at.
I'm new. I only just arrived. Where do I report?
You mean the aerodrome?
Aerodrome?
There was a certain tyranny about the color consultants because it was one of these sacred new techniques you had to obey. And Mrs. Kalmus, who was the wife of Dr. Kalmus, who had brought the process out, was in charge of making sure that all the colors were right. She used to come on the set with the most incredible clothes, the brightest colors, really Technicolor colors, and say to the art director, no, this wall is too blue or too green. I must have it a little less this and that. And she'd redesign everything. Gradually, Technicolor got used to the fact that the results I was getting was all right, and they allowed me a lot of scope. But it was the first couple of years, you know, they almost refused to do my stuff. I didn't use a meter at first, that was another thing. I used to see how it felt. Heaven was very bright, and it took the whole of the biggest stage at Denham, right up to the roof and all the way around the set. They had this enormous rock on the floor and so many hundred extras, which were made to look like thousands. It was something that had to be lit very simply. I didn't want to make it look like I'd used a lot of little lights. I wanted it to look like one sort of glow of light.
Plato. How would you like to be defended by Plato?
It was a great set, and it cost £145,000, which was a lot in those days, 50 years ago. And the great thing about it was that it actually moved, and it was quite silent, which was amazing.
Besides, I think it ought to be an Englishman. Nobody famous, but somebody with his head screwed on all right.
For me, at my first film, it was very ambitious. It wasn't quite a matter of life and death. And as it turned out in America, it was called Stairway to Heaven, which was nearer the mark as far as I was concerned. But it was a wonderful set.
Come back! Beat there! Beat there! Come back! Beat there! Beat there!
Was it something I said? People say today, regarding these films, the Michael Powell Pressburger films, that they were ahead of that time, and I agree completely with that.